Hello, everyone. I am Matt Williamson. What is going on? At Williamson NFL. Give me a follow, all that good stuff. It was going to be mailbag day, and it still will be in the second half, but I don't know how I can ignore the rumors I woke up to about the Steelers are in discussion with the Jaguars about Trevor Lawrence. And needless to say, much of the mailbag questions focused on that came today. So let's talk this through. First of all, it's Omar Khan's job to turn over every loose stone. I mean, they're not calling Kansas City about Mahomes. I mean, obviously, but if there's any chance that someone could become available, it's malpractice as a GM if you don't at least look into it. What would it cost us? Okay, we're not even close. Good chatting with you. Talk to you later. What do you want for Christian Kirk? Whatever. Yeah, you have to communicate with these teams. No question about that. Okay. Where I have reluctance on this matter, as it stands on February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, is when I'm recording this, is the Jacksonville Jaguars just hired a head coach, I think, as you know, and fired their GM in the process. That was kind of a convoluted process, to get the Bucs offensive coordinator as their new head coach. But they don't have a GM right now. Who's Omar even chatting with? I mean, is he chatting with the Khan family, no relation, that owned the team? Is he chatting with the director? I mean, the scouting staff isn't empty. I mean, there's somebody going to be at the combine. There's somebody doing stuff there. But you would think having a GM in this process for Jacksonville would be very important. So maybe there's just been a call made. I don't know. And so that would not be false reporting. But I had not heard of the gentleman that reported this first today. But by all accounts, he has a bunch of Twitter followers, and people said he is a reputable journalist. He's not just making this up. So, okay, I can buy that. To what degree, I have no idea. Now, the other thing is, it was about this time last year that they extended Lawrence to a big deal. He's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Now, that doesn't bother me from a Steelers picking up his contract part, because they paid him the bonus. But it's a lot of dead money for Jacksonville. I mean, I just don't get why Jacksonville would have interest in doing this, unless they hired this coach who said, hey, we had a bunch of interviews and I did all my homework on Trevor, and I don't think I can make him work. Or I think he's not the answer, and here's why. Or, boy, I love Shadir Sanders, or somebody like that, or some other option. Trade Trevor. My recommendation, if I take this head coaching job, is trade Trevor for, it sounds like they want a first and a second, which sounds about right, while you can, and let's break this thing down and go a different direction. That makes very little financial sense for the Jags, and it also, I can't stress enough, they don't have a general manager. Now, okay, all that aside, maybe, again, there probably are some sort of talks. To what degree, between 1 and 100, I don't know. But let's say that there are. Do we want Trevor Lawrence in Pittsburgh? My answer is yes. And I will tell you that's not super popular. And I will tell you, first off, he is not the transcendent player that came into the league that walks on water, that is the next Johnny Unitas and Pat Mahomes rolled into one. He absolutely has not been. But I will tell you, and there is some bad tape. There are some bad decisions, a lot of bad decisions. And there is some bad tape. But I would be highly interested. I can tell you for a fact, the league views him in a very strong light still. He has gone through some crazy stuff there in terms of coaching changes, little things like the Jags led the league in drops last year. Like, even when he has good plays, the people around him have failed him. He's often failed those around him. But he's also been asked to be the guy on the billboard in the face of the franchise. basically since he was like 16 years old, but certainly his entire time in the pros. And he has not taken that and run with it or lived up to that. There's no doubt. I just think this guy's book is so far from written. I really do. And trust me, like my best buds, they go to the local watering hole every Sunday, and they're very knowledgeable sports fans. And they think I'm crazy that I still have hope for this guy. They look at him and be like, oh, he's a loser. He's never going to be the guy that anyone thinks he is. I see so much talent, and I just see his surroundings and the way that people talk to me about him that are really in the know, think that he can still be a great one. And how many cracks do you get at that? So I would be highly interested. I have my doubts as it stands here in the middle of the day on Valentine's Day Eve that there are real talks going on or that Jacksonville really has any interest in moving him. But so many of your questions revolved around that. I had to at least, spend the first half of this podcast involved with that. And I'll look even more into it. And if it becomes real, who knows? BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So Chef Buck, as well as others, asked a lot about Pat Myers, offensive line coach. And here's what Chef Buck said, but a lot of you guys had a lot of the same questions. There's a lot of talk about Pat Myers being a bad coach. However, he did overachieve on expectations with Frazier and McCormick. While Fautanu showed promise, is it time to change the narrative about Myers being a bad coach to Jones might just be a bad pick? Thoughts? I do want to talk about this, and this might even eat up the rest of the podcast because all the Lawrence stuff, we might have to bump some mailbag stuff to tomorrow. He's not Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak is like Stoutland with the Eagles. Frankly, that's like a Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Mahomes type of O-line coach. They're the best in the business. And I've told you this before. It's the most important position coach. And to me, if you had $100 to spend and you got what you paid for, a lot of my coaching budget would go to my O-line coach. You know what I mean? Like if it's like, I didn't explain that perfectly well, but if I had 10 chips to place everywhere, I would invest as heavily as I could in my O-line coach, maybe even over coordinators. And I'll be frank, I don't know if Pat Myers is a good O-line coach or a bad O-line coach. And I also don't think it's his fault that Jones has played left and right and left and right. And just Jones in particular, I think the game finally started to slow down for him after the bye this year. And I think his tape in the second half of the season, post-bye, was definitely better than the first half of the season, where he was a mess. And I don't think flopping sides has been good for him. I also think we have to recognize that Jones played very little at Georgia because they're Georgia, and there's dudes ahead of him that were awesome. And he's still very young for a guy going into his third year. Now, he is going into his third year, and he's only under contract for this year and next before you have to figure out fifth-year option things. So it's time to know, And frankly, I wouldn't break my heart one bit if the Steelers used a third or fourth round pick on a project tackle just to see. And Fautanu is very, very promising to me, to your point, Chef Buck. But there's still a sliver of me that wonders if he's a guard. I don't think he is. I think he's a tackle. But That being said, a third tackle is never a bad thing in an Eagles-like fashion. Now back to analyzing coaches. I was fortunate enough to be in buildings at the college and NFL level. And because I know how difficult it is for media or any of us on the outside to really grade a position coach, especially O-line. There are so many intricacies of O-line play. They're almost a totally different creature than any other position on the field. And that's why I think having a great O-line coach is like the goose that lays golden eggs. You know, I mean, we saw it with Munchak that turns Hubbard and Finney and Al and Foster and all those guys that didn't come in the league as first round picks like DeCastro and Pouncey into serviceable or very, very good players. That is gold. I mean, Philly's the best example right now. Now, I would never say Pat Myers is that guy. But to say this guy has no chance, he's killing the team, he should have been fired, I think that's short-sighted. And frankly, I know that you don't know. Unless you're an O-line expert that I don't, then disclude this. I mean, not just you played center 20 years ago at Polk High, I mean, and you were okay, and maybe you walked on at W&J or something and played the position. It's just so intricate. I mean, that's not an excuse, though. Now, I don't know that the O-line is as bad as people think, though. You know, to your point, Frazier, McCormick certainly have outkicked their coverage. I'm super excited about Fautanu, no doubt. They had a lot of injuries to start the season. I mean, James Daniels, if you recall, was supposed to be the right guard. Herbig was the center the day he got hurt. I mean, Frazier had not knocked him off. And frankly, I think Siamalu's losing a step. You know, so while some of these guys haven't hit their stride, your left guard, I think, is beginning to wear down. None of that to me is Pat Meyer's fault. You know, it's easy to blame. I cited some stats to you guys not long ago about the protection, that yes, they've allowed too many sacks, and the sack stuff, you know, too many pressures per drop back. But I can't get around that their average time to pressure, this was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago that I recorded this, is really, really high. So the guys are holding up in protection by the time that the dam breaks loose is very late in the play. That's on quarterbacks, folks. I mean, the protection is much better than given credit for here. As for the run game, I do think this is somewhat of a transitional year, right or wrong, of much more zone stuff as opposed to man blocking. And part of that bothers me because I thought their man blocking stuff under Canada and pre-Arthur Smith was what they did best. Pulling, aggressive. And anyone that has done anything zone blocking will tell you this takes time. This takes a lot of reps. It's 5 synchronized swimmers that happen to be 350 pounds that have to, you know, synchronize as one. And I also don't think Najee is a zone back. So the fact that Myers is returning doesn't bother me at all. I'm not going to say he's a great line coach or he's Munchak, but I think it's easy and short-sighted of fans in particular and a lot of media to just say, you got to fire a line coach. What are you doing? Because I frankly think none of us know. And there are some good results here. And I think you need to see one more year of what these young investments, these high draft picks. I mean, Spencer Anderson is a late round pick and is a serviceable NFL player. There's something to be said for that too, you know? So I'm just trying to bring some realism to it all. So many of you guys asked me about O-line stuff, and so many of you guys asked me, of course, about Trevor, you know, with the Jags. And so we made a whole pod out of it. But I got a bunch of questions on the back burner that are really good. Maybe I'll address a lot of those subjects tomorrow, unless Trevor Lawrence is a Steeler by then. I chuckle. But Never know. I think they're crazy if they don't at least ask about him. I just don't know why the Jags would be motivated to do that, or who the GM is that's in charge, because they don't have one. All right, take care.